are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome. My name is Lisa Hernandez and I am with CDSS. I will be your moderator of today's webinar. Our topic for today is a semi-annual reporting. I'm going to go over a few logistics before we get started. Our webinar will be approximately 90 minutes today. The webinar will be held in listen-only mode. You may connect your audio in one of two ways, either over the telephone or through your computer. You should see this option under Audio on the webinar control panel. Please be aware that if you wish to speak and ask questions during the webinar, you must connect with a USB mic and headset or by phone. Connecting with only headphones will not allow you to speak and ask questions. If you do not have a USB mic, you must connect by phone in order to listen and ask questions during the webinar. Keep in mind that if you are connected by phone and choose to connect via mic and speakers, you will automatically disconnect from the telephone line. If you would like to ask a question, please type your question into the questions box and press send. Questions submitted via the question box will either be answered to you electronically or the moderator will ask the presenter your question. At the end of the presentation, we will have an open Q&A time for you to ask your questions by phone or headset. To ask a question during this open session, please select the hand button, which is located on the little sidebar to the left of the control panel. Please take a moment right now to locate the hand button, and if you found it, please click the hand. Great. Now that you have raised your hand to ask a question during the Q&A time, I will unmute your line and you will be asked to present your question. You can all put your hands down now. This webinar will be recorded. If you are not comfortable with having your voice recorded, you may opt to enter your question through the question box and it will remain anonymous. At the end of the webinar, we will have a short evaluation survey. Please take a moment to complete it. Your feedback is very important to us in improving future webinars. Now I'd like to turn it over to Tony Macedo and David Badal to provide you an overview of the semi-annual reporting. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Tani Macedo, and I am here with David Badal from the CalFresh Policy Bureau. Today we'll be talking about semi-annual reporting. For today's agenda, we will start by giving you a broad overview on the background of SAR, how it's here, and the legislation that got us to this reporting system. And then I'll talk about mandatory reporting requirements, and we'll go on and talk about some of the voluntary mid-period reports that households can make. There's also a new concept called verified upon receipt, or also known as VER. And then we'll kind of talk about income budgeting through the new reporting system, and we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. Again, you can type in questions in the question box if you have anything pertinent. There doesn't make any sense when we're going through the slides.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just a basic SAR overview is, I'm not sure to what level any of you folks are familiar with SAR or the reporting systems that are used by the counties for CalFresh recipients. Switching to SAR is kind of a real substantive change in terms of the culture for counties and for clients, in that they have been used to, over the past 10 or 11 years, been used to the quarterly reporting system, which is what we've been using for both CalWorks and CalFresh. Switching to SAR was mandated by Assembly Bill 6, as stated in the first bullet. It went into effect October 1 of this year. All counties are required to implement SAR for both CalWorks and CalFresh. And for whatever reason, we feel like we have to wave our own flag that we're the last state to implement SAR. That has been SAR has been something that it's an element of what's called simplified reporting by the Food and Nutrition Service of USDA. That's really what has driven California to switch to SAR. It was really CalWorks legislation, but it's mainly because FNS has wanted all states to go to simplified reporting. Benefits under SAR are frozen for 6 months of the semi-annual period. That essentially means that when benefits are determined at intake or at recertification or at the submission of the periodic report, which is the SAR 7, the client and the eligibility worker will evaluate the client's circumstances and determine how much income, if any, should be counted to determine the household's benefits for that 6-month period. The benefits as it states are frozen unless there are certain changes, which we'll be talking about later on in the presentation.
So there's some basic semi-annual terminology that when we're talking about reporting and reports, these are terms that you might hear. The first one is the SAR data month. And this is just the month that the recipient is reporting on all the information necessary to determine their eligibility. And this is the 5th month of the semi-annual period. Since the semi-annual reporting, like Dave was talking about, has 2 reports in a year. The SAR submit month is the month that the SAR 7 or the recertification is required to be submitted to the county. And this is the month after the data month. This is the month when they're actually turning in their SAR report, the SAR 7. The next term that'll be helpful, or you might be talking about, is the SAR payment period. And this is the period in which benefits are issued. And it's so it's just that 6-month period. So you have a 6-month period before and after the SAR 7 is turned in.
Okay, sorry, we had a little technical difficulty here for a moment. Okay, so what basically has changed from quarterly reporting to SAR is that, as I mentioned previously, income is that continues through the payment period is budgeted over the certification period rather than a 3-month period. That essentially means under quarterly reporting, client's income was budgeted for just the 3 months until their next quarterly report came in. Now, we had asked in a waiver that we sent to FNS that we be able to budget the income over just the 6-month SAR payment period. However, FNS denied that waiver and requires that we budget income over the full certification period. So when someone comes in and applies, we're going to actually budget their income out over 12 months. However, by default, we actually are going to be only budgeting over the payment period because of that 6-month report that has to come in. There's only one SAR 7 that's required each year now. Under quarterly reporting, there were 4 reports plus a recertification that was due at the end of 12 months during a 12-month certification period. There will be no SAR 7 taken during the recertification month, so there is just one SAR 7 and a recertification. That is the limit for the client's reporting throughout the year, unless there are other mandatory reports they have to make mid-period. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the annual reporting child-only cases that came as a result of a piece of legislation last year for CalWORKs. But in order to adapt to those annual reporting cases, we had to switch QR cases over to change reporting. Those cases will now switch back to SAR. So change reporting households that are change reporters now or were change reporters previously will continue to be change reporters. Other CalFresh households will be semi-annual reporters. Another new element to SAR, to simplified reporting for CalFresh, is there is an income reporting threshold, which is 130% of the federal poverty limit. Households are required to report to their CalFresh worker if their income exceeds 130% any time during the certification period. There are 3 IRTs in semi-annual reporting. 2 of them are related to CalWORKs, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. And the other mandatory report under quarterly reporting was reports of address changes. That is required for CalWORKs. However, again, through a waiver request, we asked FNS if we could make address changing a mandatory report. They did deny that waiver, so for CalFresh only cases, address changes are not a mandatory mid-period report. Okay, as stated earlier, generally in SAR, benefits are frozen for the SAR period, except in the following circumstances. When a client makes a mandatory mid-period report, such as their income going over 130% of the federal poverty limit, or if they're what's called ABOD, able-bodied adult without dependent children, if their work hours have changed, that has to be reported. Counties also must act on changes reported on the SAR 7, reports that are considered verified upon receipt, which Tawny will expand on later. Any change that results in a mid-period increase in benefits has to be acted on. County-initiated actions, such as if there's information that the county knows from another part of the county department, that needs to be acted on, and anytime the household requests discontinuance, we have to act on that.
So here is a copy of the SAR 7 form. So the SAR 7 form just lists, similar to the QR 7, has all the questions available. If you want to look online, there's a copy of it on our CDSS form site. It looks like you can't see the link on here, but we can share that out with you. So we're going to jump into mandatory reporting requirements. As Dave briefly touched on, there are 2 mandatory reports that must be made at any time during the certification. So CalFresh household, the amount of, so the IRT that Dave was talking about, they have to report when their amount of income exceeds this 130% of the federal poverty level, and this is per the household size. The household is told about this IRT amount during, they'll get that sent out to them on a form, and then the ABOD work hours that Dave touched upon. This is the able-bodied adults without dependents, and they have to report whenever their work hours go under 20 hours per week or 80 hours per month. So households are required to report when their income exceeds this IRT within 10 days of when the change is known to the household. And so known to the household can be the date that the household is now aware of the new employment or an increase in pay. This could also be the day they start employment, or it could be when the household first received the income that exceeded the IRT. So this slide just kind of, it shows the IRT limits per household size. And again, these numbers change yearly in October when we send out our COLA, our cost of living adjustments. So these numbers shown right here are effective October through September 30th of next year. So these are forms that will be sent to the household, and again, you'll be able to see these on our website if you want to look at them closer. The SAR-2 is the form that's going to be sent to the household that's going to display what their IRT number is. And it also has a brief overview of what their household reporting requirements are. In the CF23 SAR, this is the semi-annual reporting requirement form. So this will have more details about what a household is required or could report voluntarily during the semi-annual period. At the top of the form there's a question, or there's a checkbox, so it's if a household is initially getting this form or if the household is on a different reporting system and they're now on this form. So they'll know which reporting household they are in. And these weren't going to be in there. Sorry, those are other forms. So we also have the CalWORKS IRT. So we have the Tier 1. Hold on. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's the 3 IRTs that are mandated by Assembly Bill 6 in semi-annual reporting. There are 2 for CalWORKS. The first is the Tier 1, which is currently it's $875. It's actually, I believe, 50% of the FPL for a household of 3. I'm not going to pretend that I can tell you how that figure was arrived at. It was negotiations between the department and the advocate community and the legislature to try to make SAR cost-effective for CalWORKS. So anytime a client's income changes to exceed that level, they need to report that for CalWORKS. They also need to report to CalWORKS the amount that is likely to make them ineligible for CalWORKS benefits, which I believe is roughly around 100% of the federal poverty level. And for, as was mentioned, for CalFresh, we have the 1 IRT, income reporting threshold, which is 130% of the federal poverty limit. And as it states under the acronym PACF, which means Public Assistance CalFresh, that's a combined CalWORKS CalFresh case. And right now I believe something like 80% of our CalWORKS cases have a CalFresh component. While the CalWORKS IRTs are not mandatory reports for CalFresh in those cases, they are reported for the CalWORKS side of the case, and those changes, if there's changes made for the CalWORKS grant, they will in most cases trigger changes associated to the CalFresh allotment. If a household exceeds Tier 2 of the CalWORKS IRTs, which is the amount that is likely to make that household ineligible, they will become eligible for Transitional CalFresh, which is an optional program used in California, that when someone's their CalWORKS is terminated for their income exceeding the maximum, they are given 5 months of CalFresh benefits with their benefits frozen at the amount they had gotten previously, less the CalWORKS allotment. The next slide just has some examples of the CalWORKS IRTs. You can switch to the next slide. That's Tier 1. Here's the second slide shows the CalWORKS IRTs for Tier 2, which is the amount that's likely to make the household ineligible for CalWORKS. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is voluntary mid-period reports, and as we mentioned earlier, during the certification period or the SAR payment period, the household, while only required to report the 2 things that Tawny mentioned, the 130% of the FPL and the ABOD work hours, the client can report other stuff voluntarily that may affect their benefits. We're hoping that the culture is picked up fairly quickly, that folks will realize that they don't need to report certain things that might have an adverse impact on their benefits, but that they should tell us mid-period when something's going to happen that will result in an increase in their benefits. Some of the examples are if the household's income changes, the household's income decreases, they definitely want to let us know. If someone moves into or out of the home, they can let us know. And if their deductions increase or decrease, changes in housing expenses, changes in medical expenses, things like that. Next slide essentially talks about some of the outcomes from voluntary reports. The first mentions that voluntary reported changes may result in an increase in benefits for one program while decreasing benefits for the other. An example would be if there's something that's reported for CalWORKs that results in the CalWORKs grant going up, it could possibly result in a decrease in CalFresh benefits. As you know, CalWORKs income is counted as unearned income for CalFresh, so an increase in the CalWORKs allotment will decrease benefits in CalFresh generally. Increases due to, can we go back? Increases due to decreased income are effective the first of the month in which the change occurs or is reported. So if a client calls on the 10th of the month and says, hey, my income has gone down, and they provide whatever verification is required by the county to establish that and prove that their income has gone down, their benefits will be changed effective the first of the following month. And likewise, increases due to the addition of new household members are effective the first of the month following the report of the change. Okay, next slide talks about what happens when a voluntary mid-period report does not result in a change to the benefit amount. The county is required to send the household what's called a no change notice of action, letting them know that you did report that whatever change was reported and that did not result in a change to the household's benefits. They are notified of that. This can include changes in income, household composition, acquiring or disposal of property, or any other kind of voluntary mid-period report that doesn't result in a change.
So one voluntary mid-period report that a household may report is on their shelter costs. So shelter costs will be determined at application and recertification, and those shall remain fixed at that amount unless the household reports a change in, say, their address. So CalFresh households are not required to report mid-period changes of address. However, if they do, the accompanying shelter costs must be verified if the change in address is voluntarily reported. So again, they don't have to report that they moved, but if they do, then they do need to verify if their shelter expenses change. So if these shelter costs are not verified, benefits will be calculated without the shelter deduction. So we have an example of an address change. So in this example, we have a household, and say they are certified from January to December, and they report that they've moved and that their rent has increased from $500 a month to $600 a month. Is this report mandatory? No, this report is not mandatory, but as soon as the household does report it, it's what is called verified upon receipt, or VER, and we'll cover this in the next section. And basically that means that we know this information, and there must be an action on that information now that it's known. So what action must the CWD take? So when the household reports this change in address, again, they must verify these associated changes in sheltered costs of their rent being now at $600 a month. So our next section is talking about verified upon receipt. So verified upon receipt is new for semi-annual reporting. And the definition is that information is provided, is not questionable, that the provider is the primary source of the information, and no further information is needed to take action. And so if secondary information is requested for verification in order to act on a change in another program, such as Medi-Cal, then then by definition it's not VER. So while so verified upon receipt is something that everyone's going to have to get used to. It's kind of a big concept, but basically like for an address change, that's verified upon receipt because they're telling you they moved, and they're the primary source. They're the ones that moved, and you don't really need any other verification. But like with the shelter costs, you need to verify those.
Let me just jump in for a second real quickly on that issue of secondary information verified upon receipt. Another example of that is when we talk about the reporting must come from the primary source of the information. So if the county received a report from say the unemployed, or let's say Employment Development Department, somehow that they had information that client was in receipt of Social Security benefits. That is not verified upon receipt because the Employment Development Department is not the distributor of Social Security benefits. It has to come, in a situation like that, the information would have to come directly from the agency that was actually providing the benefit. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Dave. A voluntary report of household composition change by the head of household or a responsible adult household member is also considered VER and must be acted on. So these are just a few reports that would be considered verified upon receipt, and the county must make a change based on that information. So here's an example. So we have a mom who calls in and reports one of her children has left the home. If the household is a CalFresh only case, you would act on the change and reduce the household size, and then they would be sent a notice of action. If the household was a public assistance CalFresh case, then CalWORK would consider this report a voluntary report, and this report is considered, okay, so CalWORks is going to consider this report a voluntary report, and they're not going to act on it. But for CalFresh, like we said, household composition change must be acted on, and so for the CalFresh case, they would reduce the household size and then send a notice of action.
Yeah, so again, this sort of came as a result of conversations we've had with USDA FNS, the Food and Nutrition Service. You know, we think it's kind of weird that if a mom calls up on a CalWORks case and says, my kid left the home, CalWORks is going to say, that's not a mandatory report, we're going to ignore it. However, when we went to FNS and had discussions, the point made was, and it's valid, if mom calls up and says one of her kids left the home, how are you going to prove it? Are you going to send someone out and, you know, see that the kid's clothes are gone? I mean, it has to be considered verified upon receipt. And since information that is considered verified upon receipt must be acted on for CalFresh, even though CalWORks is not going to act, so there's going to be a kind of a dichotomy here where you're going to have the person being left on the CalWORks case but taken off the CalFresh case. Just wanted to clarify that point.
So we have another verified upon receipt example, and so we say there's a household and they're voluntarily reporting, not that the kid left the home, but that they have a new household member with income and they've moved in. For CalFresh, this report is considered VER, and the CWD will inquire if the total income is over IRT. So if, with the household member coming in, if their income is under the IRT, then the CWD is going to send out this notice of information or verification needed form, which is the CF 377.6. And this form is going to request all the household information needed to add the new household member to the case. But if the income from the new member puts the household over the IRT, then the county will need to send out a request for contact, a CF32, because this report is now a mandatory report. So again, this goes back, if the household's income is over their IRT, they have to report it. And so this CF32 is then going to request the household information to add the new household member and their income to the case. We've had a couple questions come in, and one of them is about having access to the PowerPoint. Again, this is being recorded and we'll be putting that on the website later. We have one question that I think will be good to hold for the end once we cover all the concepts. We kind of addressed it a little bit with new household members. And so IRT, someone's asking what that stands for, and this is the income reporting threshold. So it's the amount, the 130% of federal poverty for CalFresh, and so IRT is just that reporting amount that households are told this is the number that you have to tell us when you make more than this amount.
And I think there's been a couple of times we've used the acronym VER for verified upon receipt. So we'll try not to use that term, but that's what we're referring to. Someone put in a question, what is VER? And that's the acronym for verified upon receipt. So we're going to move into income budgeting, there's a lot of what's happening in semi-annual reporting is similar to what happened in quarterly reporting in terms of it's a prospective budgeting system. The eligibility worker and the client determine through conversation determine what the amount of income and expenses that client should reasonably anticipate for the duration of the SAR payment period or the certification period. It was like that in QR for just a shorter period of time. So prospective budgeting hasn't changed. Income from the SAR data month, that term is related to the submission of the periodic report, the SAR 7 form, which is sent in every 6 months. For example, if a household applies and is certified as eligible in the month of January and has a 12-month certification period, they will be responsible to submit their SAR 7 in June. June is considered the submit month. They will be reporting information for the SAR data month, which is May, and that information, as well as any other information about fluctuations or anticipated changes in income, will be used to determine what that household's income is for the duration of the certification period. We have had numerous conversations with the USDA quality control folks. They're the ones who do the case reviews. And it has been made clear, and we're making it as clear as we can to the counties in our communications, that when these cases are reviewed, there has to be documentation, clear documentation in the case record as to how those income and expense amounts were arrived at. If they can't figure out why or how income was budgeted on a case, and it turns out that for those months of review the amount was different, they will cite errors. So it's really critical that counties make sure that their workers understand that they need to document in the case record how they reasonably anticipated income and expenses for the certification and payment period. A little further explanation of reasonably anticipated income, and again, this really isn't any different than what it's been under quarterly reporting. Income is considered reasonably anticipated when the recipient and the county determine that it is reasonably certain that a recipient will receive a specified amount of monthly income during the SAR payment period. If the amount of income that will be received or when it is going to be received is uncertain, it shall not be counted. In essence, if a client comes in at intake and says, hey, I've applied for unemployment, I might get it. They've told me I might get $150 a week or $120 a week, but that amount is not certain. That income shall not be budgeted. At the point that the client begins to receive that money, if it's over the income reporting threshold, they will have to report it. Otherwise, they would have to report it on their next SAR 7. So counties are being told not to count income unless it is reasonably certain under these criteria, and this really is no different than it was under quarterly reporting. Under SAR, recipients are required to provide information for the data month, as I stated earlier, and any anticipated changes in the 6 months following the submit month when they turn their SAR 7 in. So if a client turns in a SAR 7, in the example I was using with the January to December certification period, the SAR 7 comes in June and says, hey, in the month of May, I earned $600, but I expect to earn $900 for the next 6 months, or I expect to earn less than $600. I expect to earn $300 over the next 6 months. That has to be taken into consideration in determining the reasonable amount of income to be anticipated for that the next SAR payment period or remainder of the certification period. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, if a household anticipates receipt of new income from a new source or a new job or unemployment benefits or any other source, that income is only counted if it's reasonably anticipated. That means that the household verifies that the income has been or will be approved or authorized within the certification period, or that the household is otherwise reasonably certain that the income will be received within the cert period, and that the amount of the income is known and verified, and that the start date of the income is known and verified. Therefore, if a client walks in at application or at recert or submits this information on their SAR 7 and says, I interviewed for a job that's going to pay $1,200 a month, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it, I'm pretty sure I'm going to start in 2 weeks, that income is not to be budgeted. That income is only budgeted once we know 100% for sure that the client has gotten the job, what the amount of income is going to be, and when they're going to receive it.
Great. So that was a lot of information to cover, but again, we wanted to go over and provide you a basic overview of semi-annual reporting, what it is, and what it's going to be like for households, CalFresh households, when they are they're now switched over to this reporting system. So we have a couple questions that came in through the text box, and I'm going to go over those, and then we'll go ahead and open the line after that. So the first question is, will benefits be added for a new member, such as a newborn, during the SAR 7?
Okay, well, I'm assuming that when it says during the SAR 7, they mean that means during the SAR payment period. And yes, if a household reports a birth of a child, a newborn, or any other person that's come into the home, if information is provided and all requested verifications are provided, that person will be added the first of the following month. No different than it is under QR. So when we say the benefits are frozen, it essentially means that unless a household voluntarily reports and verifies something that's going to have a negative impact on their case, we're not going to change their benefits. We're not going to decrease their benefits during the SAR payment period unless the household kind of goes to extraordinary efforts to provide us information that they're not required to report.
So another question that we've received is, if participants weren't able to send their SAR 7 in before the end of the month, can their benefits can they get their benefits restored after the SAR-7 is submitted?
Yeah, again, not any different than under quarterly reporting. The SAR-7 is due in the month, the 6th month of the certification period. It's due by the 11th. Technically, I think it says it's due by the 5th, but it's due by the 11th. If it comes in after the deadline, the client will have received a notice of action saying, hey, we didn't receive your SAR-7, or if they did submit it and it was submitted incomplete, there'll be another notice that says, hey, we got your SAR-7, but there's stuff in it that's missing. You need to get it back to us. Now, if that client still does not turn that SAR-7 in before the end of the submit month, but does come in any time during the month subsequent to the submit month, their case can be restored under a waiver we received from FNS a couple of years ago. However, that household's benefits will be prorated from the date they actually turn the SAR-7 in. In the old days, that client would have had to come in and go through a full intake and start their case from scratch. Because of this waiver, they don't have to do that. They can get their benefits restored without an application, but again, their benefits will be prorated from the date that they turn in that late SAR-7.
So we're getting a few more questions in through the text line, but I don't, if someone wants to call in and talk, you can raise your hand and we can also call on you. So our next question is, how are households notified about this change in reporting? Will counties' customer service call centers be able to receive SARs over the phone using telephonic signatures?
Well, clients have been being made aware of the change to semi-annual reporting since, I believe, April of this year. Counties were sending out notifications. This thing is up and running. It went into effect October 1, so all households have been notified. All households have been provided with their particular income reporting thresholds. And as far as the submission of a SAR-7 with electronic signature, we're not at that point yet. The SAR-7 is still a hard copy that has to be submitted. I think there is some discussion about maybe sometime down the road figuring out a way to do them electronically, but we haven't reached that point yet in California.
All right, our next question is, are special populations like homeless and disabled still exempt from reporting? Do they still only have to recertify annually?
Yeah, those households are still considered change reporters. Homeless households, households with elderly disabled members, they still only have to report when there's a certain criteria, and I believe one of the forms that's in the slideshow talks about the, I think, Tony, I can't remember, if we have the change reporting form in here in this presentation.
We don't have it in here, but there is a change reporting, separate change reporting slide or forms that are sent.
Right. So the change reporting, the change reporting requirements have not changed. Those households are still considered change reporters. They do not have to report via SAR.
Great. So the next question is, how are incomes that are not reasonably anticipated handled? For example, a participant is self-employed and their income fluctuates. Is their responsibility to monitor their income and compare it to the IRT every month?
Well, yeah, that's it. Self-employment's kind of a different situation, but essentially, yeah, household still needs to keep track of their income. They know what their IRT is. They've been sent the document. I believe it's the CF-23 that tells them what their IRT is, and if that household's income changes, I'll give an example, the one we've used in a lot of the discussions we've had with FNS. If you've got some kind of a route salesperson, and they have a really good month in which their income exceeds the IRT, their IRT is say $2,100 a month and they receive $3,000. They are supposed to pick up the phone and call or otherwise communicate that to the county to tell them that they have in fact gone over the IRT, but it's the county's job at that point to have a discussion with the client and find out if that income is going to continue at that level. If that income is reasonably anticipated to continue at that level, the household's report will be taken and the case will be terminated. However, if the household says, I'm not sure I'm going to keep making that was a really good month for me, I'm probably going to go back down to making $1,500 a month. Through that discussion between the eligibility worker and the county, they'll determine that what amount of income should be reasonably anticipated for the duration of the certification period. They will not necessarily terminate the case. So income that exceeds the IRT has to be expected to continue to exceed the IRT before the case will be terminated.
So our next question was kind of a repeat. Are seniors, disabled, and homeless exempt from having to do this R7? And that answer is yes. They're change reporters, and so they're then have change reporting requirements, and they wouldn't be filling out this R7. Our next question is, will you be able to submit a SAR-7 via the see4yourself.com or CalWIN, or print a copy for your SAR-7 from your See4Yourself website?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I don't believe we have the SAR-7 in any of the online automated systems yet. I think we're still just doing applications and recertifications. I'm not 100% sure of that answer, but because I'm not involved in that part of the process. But I know there has been discussion of trying to get to that point down the road. But right now, as far as I know, we're still just doing applications and recertifications online.
So we have one more question that's here through the text box, so I'll go ahead and go over this question, and then we'll open up the line for people who want to voice their questions. So if the whole household are seniors that have employment that fluctuates, do they have to turn in a SAR-7?
If they are a change, okay, so all the members of the household are seniors or elderly disabled and they have earned income. You know what, off the top of my head, I don't know if that's a change reporting or a SAR household. If you can send me an email, I don't know, is our phone numbers up on this thing? Yeah, if you want to send me an email at david.badal, B-A-D-A-L, at dss.ca.gov. I'll be glad to get an answer to you as soon as I can. I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head.
Great, so that was the last text question. I'll go ahead and open up the line.
Okay, we're going to go ahead, and we have a hand raised for Jenny Dominguez. Jenny, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, actually this is Amy Dearlam for Jenny Dominguez. And I have two things. One, I believe Sacramento County is handling SAR-7 electronically if you set up an account with CalWINS.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we just had Sacramento County do a training for us on the whole CalWINS. And I believe, I'm pretty sure, they talked about if you have the account set up.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, you could double check, and I can double check, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, another unit in our policy shop is dealing with the online applications and so on, so I will certainly clarify with them.
Yeah. The other question is, I do have several clients who have seasonal work or are getting work as they can in these times. And so typically what they're doing is, because they're concerned about their benefits, they're turning in reports every month with what that month looked like for them. My question is, do they need to do that, or do they only need to do that if they max out over the IRT?
The only time that they have to report is if their income exceeds the income reporting threshold.
However, they could voluntarily if it's going to make a difference in their benefits.
Sure. If they're having income budgeted against them now because they have verified a certain amount of income, and they want to report that that income has gone down, they should do that and provide that verification, and that will result in an increase in their benefits. Again, it depends on the circumstances of the case, how that case was set up initially with the fluctuating income. That's been a real sticking point with us in trying to get this thing clarified with the feds, the whole issue of fluctuating income, because you could have someone come in and say, hey, normally I earn around 200 a month, but sometimes I earn 800, but maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year I earn 0. And what is reasonably anticipated for that client? We've gone back and forth with the feds on this many times and said, okay, so you've got some months in which we know the client's not going to have any income at all. Is it reasonable for us to anticipate 0? And their response is, no, it's not reasonable, because you know that in most months they're going to earn something. So when we talk about how it's critical that the county document in the case record how that income was arrived at, I can't overstate that enough. If they can look back over the last 6 months and say, okay, you had 3 months in which you earned $200, 2 months in which you earned 0, and 1 month in which you earned $800. We're not going to average income under SAR, but we are going to reasonably anticipate. And if the client and the worker can reasonably arrive at a figure and say, okay, for the majority of months you made $200 a month, let's count that as your base, and they document that in the case record, that is considered accurate by the feds.
Okay. It comes up quite a bit right this time of year because of all the seasonal work.
Sure. Sure.
Quite a bit. Yeah. And we have different workers. Nobody in an all-house in Sacramento County in an all-adult household, you have no one particular worker.
Right.
So unfortunately, you have different people all the time working on your case. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be right. And we've had conversations with the feds. If you have the exact same circumstances and you go from one eligibility to worker to another, hopefully they're going to arrive at the same conclusion. But if they can document, and it's reasonable how they documented what that amount is, FNS is okay with those amounts being different.
Okay.
It's a weird concept for us. That's why I say it's a massive cultural change, both for clients and both for counties and anyone who's been dealing with the CalFresh program. Is this concept of reasonable anticipation to the point of, as long as it makes sense in the case record how you got there, that's the right answer.
Can we take another question from the line?
Okay, we have another question from Yvette Vivanco. Yvette, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, we had a question about families with how the IRT calculated. Is it by the amount of people eligible for benefits, or is it by the household size?
Yeah, it's the entire household size.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Okay, we have another hand raised for Alejandra Ariola. Alejandra? Hello? She just put her hand down. Okay, we have another one from Tess Childs. Tess, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Say, for example, we have a household with that SAR reporting, and she got employed within that 6-month period. So say, for example, there's 2 months left with that employment. Will she be asked, I'm talking about CalFresh, will she be asked to pay that 2 months that she exceeded the 130% income if she's
yeah,
no
if she
longer eligible?
right, if I'm understanding your example, say it's the month 4 of the 6-month payment period, and her income she's received employment and her income has now gone over 130%, she
Right.
is required to report that to the county, yes. And if she does not report that receipt of that 130 of exceeding the 130%, that is a failure to report, and that is considered in those months following would be considered an overissuance. So it is a mandatory report.
Okay.
Now, again, if, as Tawny mentioned in her slides, there's some leeway in what that, because they have to report those changes within 10 days. Those mandatory reports have to be reported within 10 days. So if that person, let's say, again, using my January through December example, if that person, their SAR 7 is due in June, if that person in April gets a job and knows they're going to get that job. Let's say it's a job with the state of California. They find out on April 5th that they're going to start a job on May 1st.
Okay.
They literally have until they can report it within 10 days of finding out they got the job. They can report it from 10 days from when they actually started the job, or they can report it within 10 days of when they actually received the income from the job. So in that example, even though she found out on April 5th that she had received this job offer, she knows she's not going to start until May 1st, and she knows she's not going to receive her first paycheck until, let's say, June 1st.
Okay.
In that example, she has until June 10th to tell the county. So it kind of depends on when they provide the information.
Right.
But
okay.
yeah, it is exceeding the 130%. At whatever point they report it, but it is a mandatory report.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, does anybody have any more live questions that they want to ask? If so, can you please raise your hand? And can you please introduce yourself and what organization you're from? Thank you.
So we have another message question. So the question is, what happens when there's a family of 5 and only 3 people in that household are eligible? How would their benefits be calculated to determine their IRT?
Well, their IRT is based on income for a household of 5. That's the entire household. The purchase and prepare household's income. So if it is one household, whether there may be some excluded folks or not, the household's IRT is based on the number of people that are in that purchase and prepare household together. So it would be based on 5. And they will be notified in writing on that CF23 and the SAR2 what their exact IRT is for their household size. What people are encouraged to do is like tape that thing on the side of their refrigerator so they'll know when they need to report to the county.
Okay, we have another question from Tess Childs. Tess, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, I'm good. I already did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you guys have any other questions, we've answered all the ones that were in the message, except for when will the recorded webinar be posted, and that'll be posted on the CalFresh Outreach website today. So you guys can look for that if you want to go over the information again. It looks like we got another question in. If the income has changed but still not over the 130%, do they need to report? And that's a great question. Again, we're saying that the mandatory report is when it's over 130. So really, we just need to have the households not report unless they exceed that income. So again, if their income has changed and it's not over the 130, they don't need to report it. But if the household's income has decreased, then that income, they can report it, and then their benefits can be adjusted. But otherwise, they do not have to report that income.
Yeah, so I would say, encourage clients to report if their income goes down or if their expenses go up. And we don't really want them to report increases in income if it does not exceed 130%, because that puts us in a position of having to try to verify whether or not that income exists, and if it's verified under the definition of verified upon receipt, if a client tells us that their income has gone up but it's under the IRT and they provide us proof, indisputable proof, we will have to act to decrease their benefits. Whereas if they didn't tell us about it at all, we wouldn't have to act. Does that answer that question? Hearing nothing, I will assume it does.
So another question we have up here is, how is the SAR7 cycle determined? Previously, QR7 cycles were determined by case number. So we're going to have you refer to ACL 1225. There's charts on how those cycles will work.
Yeah, it's probably going to be the same. I know LA County was different. LA County based their cycles on what they called their, I forget what the term was, primary digit or something in the case number. But in most cases, it's going to be based on the date of application, and kind of the same as in QR. It's there's 6-month periods instead of 3.
So our next question is, how long does a worker have to approve or deny a case for CalFresh?
That's unchanged under SAR, 30 days. The case has to be either approved or denied, or the application withdrawn within 30 days of the date of application. That's the date that the application is received in the county welfare office.
So I'm not seeing any more questions. Any other burning SAR questions anyone wants to ask?
Burning SAR
Burning,
questions?
yes. So if not, I guess that will conclude our SAR presentation. So.
Okay, this concludes our webinar for today. I would like to thank Tawny and David for conducting this webinar. And please complete the short evaluation survey after you log off today. Your feedback is very important to us in improving our webinar process. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. We appreciate your time, and you all have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.